Newsfirst at 9. Headlines.
Hello, very good evening to you. Welcome to Primetime News live on MTV Sports and Shakti TV. I'm Shahan Jirampati and these are your headlines. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Navi Pillai reiterates the need for an international inquiry on Sri Lanka. JHU urges the government to commence a domestic investigation without being restricted to a time frame. Illegal settlement of the North Sanctuary of Vilpattu, an Action TV expose. Newsfirst Kilinochi correspondent obstructed from carrying out his duty. Malaysia identifies 122 objects suspected to be linked to MH370. US criminologist disputes the conclusions drawn by Malaysian authorities of the fate of MH370. Around the world in 40 days, an initiative by Newsfirst together with Sri Lanka youth commences. Well, those are headlines. We now cross over to the main desk for these stories in detail and much more.
Yes, thanks Shaheen. Good evening, I'm Madhushka Balasurya.
I'm Minoshi Ratnasekara. And in your top story tonight, presenting her report on promoting accountability and reconciliation in Sri Lanka to the 25th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva today, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillai, said that an international investigation on alleged human rights violations in Sri Lanka is not only warranted but possible. Here are excerpts from the debate on the report at the UNHRC today.
Failure to address the grief and trauma of victims and survivors undermines confidence in the state and reconciliation. At this time, new evidence continues to emerge, and witnesses are willing to come forward to testify before international mechanisms in which they have confidence and which can guarantee their protection. This shows that an international inquiry is not only warranted but also possible and can play a positive role in eliciting new information and establishing the truth where domestic inquiry mechanisms have failed.
Politicized processes will only impede the delicate balance of the ongoing reconciliation process in Sri Lanka, as well as the constructive engagement Sri Lanka has continued to maintain with this Council.
We welcome the Government of Sri Lanka's cooperation in facilitating recent visits by the High Commissioner and the Rapporteur for Internally Displaced Persons, and encourage the Government to respond positively to the offer of technical assistance made by the High Commissioner and requests for visits by Special Procedure mandate holders. We note that the High Commissioner Pillai has encouraged the Government to prioritize the visits of the Special Procedures mandate holders on enforced or involuntary disappearances and on minority issues.
The Council continues to pay disproportionate attention to Sri Lanka, spearheaded by political motivations. Rather than encourage and support the ongoing reconciliation process in Sri Lanka, as well as the constructive engagement Sri Lanka continues to maintain with this Council, it is ironic that the draft resolution on Sri Lanka being mooted by some members of this Council is reflected of the same partisan agenda in its request to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to undertake a comprehensive independent investigation. Assistance to this progress by third-party experts whose mandate and credentials are far from clear, and its deliberate exclusion of a significant part of the duration of the terror conflict from the period under investigation via the introduction of particular time frames would be both precedent-setting and prejudicial of the interests of all member and observer states of this Council in future.
Over here at home, the chief prelates of the three major sects say that through the introduction of war crimes allegations, the UN Human Rights Council is preparing to destroy the peace that has been achieved rather than establish peace in the country. In a letter addressed to the President of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, the chief prelates say that they can no longer remain silent about the unjust political moves that are being made against a country which lays claim to a civilization that dates back thousands of years.
The chief prelates point out in their letter that the intention of the resolution at the Human Rights Council in Geneva is not to provide assistance for Sri Lanka that is looking to the future after securing peace, reconciliation and unity following the war victory, but rather to destabilize the nation once again. The letter says that the High Commissioner, who is acting on prejudicial concepts, is not an impartial official. The chief prelate said that introducing a resolution on Sri Lanka in such a backdrop is a violation of natural justice. The chief prelates further note that while there are numerous nations across the world that have intervened in civil conflicts, the fact that these are being disregarded while Sri Lanka received disproportionate attention affirms that what is transpiring is the political targeting of an individual nation. In their letter to the President of the Human Rights Council, the chief prelate said that the actions of the Human Rights Council will set a dangerous precedent.
Now, the Jatika Hela Urume meanwhile has called on the government to immediately conduct a credible domestic investigation, notwithstanding the time frame that was set by the Lessons Learnt and Reconciliation Commission. At a media briefing convened today, JHU seniors elaborated thus.
We propose to the government that they immediately hold an investigation via a domestic mechanism without being constrained by this time frame. On the 22nd of February 2002, an agreement was struck with Prabhakaran. Prabhakaran died on the 19th of May 2009. The Lessons Learnt and Reconciliation Commission only considers incidents that occurred in this time frame. This resolution too calls for information from this time frame only. We say that a domestic investigation should be held rather than an international investigation into how these events came about. We must not allow for the historic identity of the nation to be undermined out of fear of sanctions.
ඓතිහාසික අනන්‍යතාවය යටවීමට ඉඩ දිය යුතු නැහැ. මේ ලංකාවේ ආණ්ඩුව වැරදි කරනවා නම්
if the Sri Lankan government is doing wrong and violating human rights, then why is it that they are voted in? Elections are held every 6 years. There is an election this time too. If the people feel that the human rights are being violated, that they can't live, that the situation is very serious, then the people can decide. It is not the countries led by the US that should change the government of this country.
The final press conference of the United People's Freedom Alliance ahead of the Western and Southern Provincial Council elections was convened today.
There is no doubt that we will achieve victory in 51 electorates of the 54 within these 6 districts. We believe that it will be difficult for us to achieve victory in 3 electorates. We will secure a resounding victory of 61% in the Western Province and a 64% victory in the Southern Province. On the 29th, we will go to the polls with the results that will be given after the vote that take place in Geneva at midnight on the 28th. Therefore, I wish to make 2 requests from the international community. One is the political message that is etched in the results of the election. I will also request from the United Nations Human Rights Council, the United States and all other countries supporting the resolution to clearly understand the message that the Sri Lankan voters will give.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka has voiced its protest against a Gazette announcement issued by the government saying the military will be employed to maintain public peace. Numerous experts participated at a conference organized by the BSL on this topic yesterday.
The army is a major factor in ensuring a country's security, but they are now being controlled with political power. In such a backdrop, society too is being pushed to militarization, and the military governance created during the civil war situation is slowly spreading like a shadow within democratic society. While there has been a decline in the rule of law, today it is at risk. Human rights have been violated, and because of several persons who have limitless power, society too has fallen for the attraction of those who are close to them.
There is lack of confidence in the judicial system, and judicial system is now not thought by business as a place where is the last place to resolve internal disputes or even disputes between the state and themselves. Systems and processes that ensure transparent, open bidding on a competitive basis and award of contracts based on the best fit for the purpose is no longer in practice. Today, the revenue systems of customs, excise and tax are not applied on a professional basis. Our freedoms are being restricted. Let us open out them to the world and show where we are being restricted, because if we do nothing other than just speak out, a few of us, I do not think we will achieve.
I think it is important that we should have a sustainable peace and not the securitization of the state, which is what we see today. I worked under Kofi Annan in the United Nations, and Kofi Annan famously said, there can be no security without development, and there can be no development without security, and there can be neither without human rights. The role of the armed forces is there both in war and in peace, but they are quite different in both places. Emergency rule and the Prevention of Terrorism Act, under which a number of derogations of human rights take place. But these should be temporary until the situation ends. Unfortunately, we've had long periods of emergency rule which suspends the practice of human rights.
If a state has an obligation and an individual member of the administration violates a right, even if the state has not actively done so, by their inaction they have violated the right. A private individual was assaulted by a member of parliament in the presence of the police, and the Supreme Court said the state was responsible. Why? Because they failed to prevent the violation. Sri Lanka has the lowest representation of women legislators in parliament for the whole of South Asia and in many other countries. We have less than 5% in the last 50 or 60 years. Now, in that context, affirmative action is extremely important, and therefore there should be a commitment on the part of the government to introduce legislation which will provide for that. Unfortunately, we have not done so, and this is a clear case of a violation of equality rights.
On a related note, parallel to the convention organised by the Bar Association, a separate media briefing was organised by the National Collective of Lawyers Organisation.
Politics have taken centre stage at the Sri Lanka Bar Association as never seen before. This is not the requirement of any member of the Bar Association. This convention is being held to degrade the government and Sri Lanka and take this convention to the Geneva session. Several members of the executive committee have expressed their strong displeasure over this.
Still in local news, Newsfirst provincial correspondent in Kilinochchi, Yana Sangari Saptasangari, faced a situation when attempting to cover a story in the area. Yana Sangari Saptasangari said that he faced this problem when he tried to compile a report regarding a shopping complex which comes under the purview of the Karachi Pradesh Sabha being sealed for failure to pay rent.
Newsfirst provincial correspondent Nanasangari Saptasangari said that he arrived at the location after receiving reports that several stalls in the shopping complex were to be sealed off. He added that thereafter he was assaulted by the employees of the Karachi Pradesh Sabha for allegedly obstructing their duties.
அனுமதி எடுக்கணும் சொல்லுங்க புதைச்சதானே செய்தி ஒன்று கிடைச்சிருக்கு கடையில் கட்டாயம் பூட்டப்படுது அது நான் கேட்பேன் தானே நீங்க இப்ப ரிஸ்க் எடுக்கிறீங்க அதுக்காக பங்கு வைக்கலாம் அது நான் கேட்பேன் தானே என்ன தண்ணீர் கேமராவை பிடிச்சேன்னு அதான் அனுமதி எடுத்துட்டு வந்து அனுமதி இருக்கணும்னு சொல்லுங்க என்னதுக்கு அனுமதி இருக்கணும் நீர் அடியும் நீர் பேச சேவனுக்கு நீர் அடியும் சேவனுக்கு நீர் அடியும் நான் படம் எடுத்தினான் எல்லாரையும் போலீஸுக்கு சொல்லும் நீர் போலீஸுக்கு சொல்லும் போலீஸுக்கு அடிக்கிறதானா நான் உங்கள்ட்ட வந்து கேட்டேன் இவர் என்ன செஞ்சார் கேமராவை எப்ப பிடிச்சு உடைக்கணும் கராச்சி பிரதேசவினுடைய உத்தியோகத்தர்கள்
The employees of the Karachi Pradesh Sabha did not allow me to cover a new story. They also argued with me. When they tried to attack me, my camera was turned on. So instead of attacking me, they hit my camera. I have lodged a complaint with the Kilinochchi police and they assured that they will take action regarding this.
Now, in a story that has been making headlines around the world, a further 122 objects, potentially from the missing Malaysian plane, have been identified by satellite. The images taken on March 23rd showed objects up to 23 meters in length. All aircrafts taking part in today's search have now left the area without identifying debris from the plane. Newsfirst Shamir Rasuddin, who has been closely watching the developments on MH370, joins us now and dwells deep into the missing flight.
No concrete information has come to light regarding the missing flight MH370. Family members of those on board the missing flight say the authorities have failed to provide them with evidence that the plane had in fact crashed in the southern Indian Ocean. Now, this is a Boeing 777-200, a recreation of the MH370 flight. What happened to this flight on the 9th of March? Malaysian Prime Minister said on Monday that the plane had ended its journey in the southern Indian Ocean. Inmarsat, which monitored the movements of the plane when it went missing of primary and secondary data, came to the conclusion about the flight's path and where this particular flight in question had crashed. The British satellite company used the Doppler effect to calculate and conclude the flight's path. Now, US criminologist Professor Jason Kistner challenges the verdict of the missing flight MH370, and he joins us now from California. A very good evening and welcome to Newsfirst. Professor, starting off, tell us what happened to flight MH370.
Well, like most other people around the world, I would say that it seems to be indeterminate. But I suppose, unlike many people, I'm willing to consider assigning reasonable probabilities to certain possibilities that others are just willing to dismiss out of hand, or actually probably more accurate, especially if you're talking about mainstream media, at least here in the United States, aren't even really willing to talk about at all, which is something I find somewhat suspicious in and of itself. So I consider it reasonably likely that there was some form of electronic intrusion with respect to this aircraft, such that it was redirected.
Electronic intrusion. Is this possible? Can this be done?
But as far as being able to electronically guide an aircraft to a desired destination, there's no doubt whatsoever that that's possible. Anybody can go on YouTube and see that that was done with respect to a Boeing aircraft landing in very treacherous territory, entirely on autopilot. I believe the landing zone was near Tibet somewhere. There's no doubt that it can be done.
Let's say someone guided the aircraft, Professor, as you suggested. If so, what's the fate of flight MH370?
I've been trying to reflect on it carefully and thinking about what I would do with regard to an assessment of the probabilities there. And I have to say that the longer the time frame goes on that nothing is found, then I start to lean more towards the crash hypothesis. But I still haven't seen any evidence to direct a person away from the prospect that this was a hijacking. And interestingly enough, in spite of the fact that they pretty much seem to want to put this investigation on the shelf.
The Malaysian Prime Minister on Monday said, Professor, that the plane had ended in the South Indian Ocean. Inmarsat, which monitored the movements of the plane, came to the conclusion, using the Doppler effect, that the plane had gone down 1,500 miles southwest of Perth. Your take on this?
I found that really quite fascinating, to be honest. So now they've all of a sudden figured out a brand new way to analyze the data that they couldn't have done several days ago. And it just seems to me to be very, very, very abrupt. And I would like to see, well, so what's the data set? Why should we believe that all of the satellite signals were reliable signals? Could one or more of them have been spoofed?
A few days after the aircraft goes missing, Professor, the Malaysian authorities said that the pilots had deliberately switched off the transponder. My question is, mustn't the ground staff inform the pilots that they are off radar, and why did this information come so late?
I was very, very surprised by that as well. So yes, I did find that kind of suspect, and I was kind of bewildered about exactly what happened in connection with that.
Professor, will the black box of the plane solve the mystery in terms of flight MH370?
Will we find the black box? It'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be terribly surprised, although perhaps it is a bit cynical. Maybe the black box magically materializes right after that battery signal, the debris. The debris magically materializes right after that black box signal has been lost. Who knows?
Welcome back to the news. Now, election campaigning for the Western and Southern Provincial Council polls will conclude at midnight tonight. Elections Commissioner Mahinda Deshapriya said that measures will be taken to remove all placards put on display at election propaganda offices in the divisional level after midnight tonight.
After midnight tonight, that is the 26th of March, any form of election propaganda activity will be prohibited. Persons need to refrain from organizing election meetings, musical shows, sports events, cycle parades or any other form of propaganda activities. In addition, placards promoting candidates and the raising of flags of the approved election propaganda officers need to be removed. We have informed the respective candidates and those in charge of those officers in this regard. Anything that is not removed will be removed tomorrow morning with the assistance of the police and the officers of the Elections Commission.
Meanwhile, the police say that they have received 133 complaints related to the provincial council polls. Police media spokesperson SSP Ajit Rona, speaking to reporters today, said that 126 people have been taken into custody over the complaints that were received.
Gampaha District candidate Attorney at Law Susara Dinal says that local politicians too have a responsibility to steer the country towards development. He made this statement at a public rally held in Paliagoda.
This rally, which was attended by UPFA Western Provincial Council candidate from the Gampaha District, Attorney at Law Susara Dinal, was held in the Paliagoda area. Traditional politics is over. From 1980, we engaged in politics while reprimanding foreigners. Until 2009, we engaged in politics while scolding the tigers. But now the foreigners are gone and the tiger is gone. Now we must develop our country. The President is carrying out a rapid program of developing the country. But locally, local politicians have a responsibility to initiate development locally.
Colombo District candidate for the Western Provincial Council SM Marika charges that the government is providing lands in Colombo to foreign nations while posing as patriots. He made this allegation addressing a rally in Mount Lavinia yesterday.
A propaganda rally for Colombo District candidate SM Marika was held in Mount Lavinia yesterday. Around 500 acres around the golf green is being reclaimed. The Environment Authority is yet to present a feasibility report on what will happen to seawater in this area in question once the land is reclaimed. This will bring man-made tsunami and destroy the fishing industry of those living in this area. The people will lose their homes. The education of the children will be hampered. The government is attempting to transform these people into beggars and the homeless. Why is the area being reclaimed? To construct Formula 1 racetracks and car races to take place, and for Chinese enterprises to construct hotels. 500 acres is equal to 233 hectares. Of this 233 hectares, Sri Lanka has ownership of only 125 hectares. 88 hectares of the remaining 108 hectares will be owned by China 99 years to come. This will be given to China for eternity. This is how the so-called patriots are building Chinese colonies in Colombo and are betraying the country. A number of artists were also present at the election rally.
Now, the Colombo District candidate of the Democratic Party, Susil Kindel Pitya, states that he will bring victory to the Western Province as well as the whole nation in the future. He made this comment while engaged in a door-to-door campaign ahead of the Western Provincial Council polls on Saturday.
Another phase of the door-to-door campaign organized by Susil Kindel Pitya, candidate of the Colombo District contesting under the Democratic Party ticket, was held in Kolonava. We came here today to launch our final campaign. On the last day, we are confident that we will secure victory. With certainty, I can say that we will join the leader who saved this country, the leader of the Democratic Party, Sarath Fonseca, and with him we will bring victory to this town and to the Western Province. And before long, we will bring victory to this nation as well.
Parliamentarian Sajid Premadasa says that though human rights is being spoken of, the people of Hambantota have been deprived of their economic rights. The MP made this comment while addressing a public rally in Lunugambehera this morning.
මානව අයිතිවාසිකම් ගැන කතා කරන යුගයක හම්බන්තොට දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ ජනතාවට වැදගත් වෙන්නේ
in an era where human rights is being spoken of, what's most important to the people of Hambantota? Their human rights or their economic rights? If you take a look at the people of Hambantota district, the people in this district are being put under immense pressure and they are getting poorer by the day. Access to clean drinking water is becoming very scarce. Many people are not eating their meals and are in a very difficult situation. Today, the program to eradicate poverty in the Samurdhi has turned to a joke not only at home but in the international sphere.
දුප්පත්කම තුරන් කිරීමේ වැඩසටහන ජාතික පමණක් නෙවෙයි ජාත්‍යන්තර විහිළුවක් බවට පත් වෙලා.
The Unity Through Power Devolution movement convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
මේ ආණ්ඩුව තමයි මේ සියලුම ප්‍රශ්නවල පිටිපස්සේ ඉන්නේ.
It is the government that is behind all these problems. Some people have latched onto this and are engaging in politics. There is Hakim on one side and Rishad Badiuddin on the other.
ඒ පක්ෂ දෙක දාලා බුදු බලත් එක්ක ඒගොල්ලන් අරගන්නවා කියලා අර නාටකමේ ඒගොල්ලන් කොටස්කාරයෝ වෙලා ඉන්නවා.
That means tells Hakim to put forward a list. He tells him to slam the Budubala. He tells Hakim and Rishad to slam the Budubala because when the three of them fight, it is beneficial for him. For 5 years now, they have celebrated saying the LTTE is no more. So how are they regrouping? Can we tell the UN now that the war is completely over? No. No matter how much they falsely want away that they are opposed to America, clearly it is global capitalism, the American socio-economic activity that is being established here. What is the content of the various economic plans that have been put forward for us? It ensures that the bigwigs receive all facilities and everyone else is cut off. The working people are burdened.
In more local news, all suspects in the murder of a British national and the rape of his girlfriend in Tangol, who were previously released on bail, have been returned to remand custody. The case was taken up today at the Colombo High Court. High Court Judge Rohini Valdama noted that the case has been subject to the glare of the international community, issued the order to remand the bailed suspects. Following the testimony given in court today by Victoria Sandra, the rape victim, lawyers for the defence sought bail for the other suspects in the case as the witness had only positively identified the chief suspect. The request for bail was rejected.
Yet another new initiative of Newsfirst, around the world in 40 days. An initiative by Newsfirst together with Sri Lanka youth commenced in Colombo today. President Mahinda Rajapaksa officially handed over the Sri Lankan flag to the 5-member Sri Lankan delegation this morning.
Newsfirst together with Sri Lanka Youth is organising Around the World in 40 Days in line with the World Youth Conference in May this year. The objective of this initiative is to create awareness regarding the World Youth Conference in Sri Lanka. President Mahinda Rajapaksa officially handed over the Sri Lankan flag to the 5-member delegation at Carlton House, Tangol this morning. A group including Minister of Youth Affairs and Skills Development Dallas Alahaperma, Parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa and Director General of Sri Lanka Youth Lalit Piyom Pereira attended the event. The 5-member Sri Lankan delegation comprises of Assistant Director of the Sri Lanka Youth Services Council, Saman Abewardana, Saman Kumara, Amudu Raja Tevaraja attached to Sri Lanka Youth and Director General Manager of Newsfirst Yasarat Kamal Siri and Assistant News Manager Ramesh Irugal Bandara. The delegation will reach Malaysia tomorrow morning. Subsequently, the delegation will visit Singapore and visit 18 countries in a span of just 40 days.
A media briefing was organised at the auditorium of the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited to create awareness on this novel initiative.
There are a lot of partners who are behind to make this event a success. His Excellency President officially handed over the Sri Lankan flag to Sri Lankan youth delegates to take around the world in 40 days. This conference is going to happen in Hambantota and also in Colombo. the opening ceremony is going to be in Hambantota. The Capital Maharaj Organization Limited has been in the business of connecting with people. We've been connecting with people in Sri Lanka with our products and with our communication. And every day. And I think maybe once in 3 years, almost every Sri Lankan connects with us one way or the other. And then why youths? If you really look at it, a whole lot of change in this world right now is being driven by youths.
As Sri Lanka's most dynamic media network, we realized that inclusive association with the youth of our country was key. That is why, for many years, this has been a major part of our programming strategy. In terms of information, education and entertainment, across all languages, offering youth a platform to shine. There has never been a better time to invest in youth empowerment and inspire them towards leadership in our communities.
Today, this evening, is a most historic day for all of us here. I say historic very purposefully. Just think about it. Around the world in 40 days, perhaps most of the world's most important cities, 5 Sri Lankan delegates representing Sri Lanka energetically and proudly will represent each one of us here, and not just us, but 20 million Sri Lankans living everywhere. It is indeed a proud moment for us.
Police media spokesperson SSP Ajit Rona says that 2 special police teams have commenced investigations over the discovery of counterfeit 5,000 rupee notes.
The suspect who was arrested by the police over the discovery of 2 million rupees in counterfeit notes was remanded until the 3rd of next month after he was produced before the Hulstorf magistrate today. Police media spokesperson SSP Ajit Rona said that the suspect had used the counterfeit notes as a payment of profits of an establishment where Dulanjali Jayakodi invested in. During a search conducted at the suspect's residence, the police were able to discover another stash of counterfeit currency notes and equipment used for the printing of the notes. During investigations, she said that she had made an investment at a certain institution, and as per the investment, she was to receive a sum of money. The individual of this institution had handed over this money to her. While the Criminal Investigations Department was at the location, the individual in question too arrived there. He had brought with him a cheque of 2 million rupees from another private bank to be deposited into the account of Dulanjali Premadasa. We have seized that cheque. The Criminal Investigation Department has deployed 2 special teams for this purpose to investigate the matter.
Yesterday on Action TV, we exposed deforestation that is taking place in the Pannila Reserve on the borders of Singharaja. It would appear that the Singharaja Reserve is not the only national park in this country that is under threat. Action TV has uncovered that an illegal settlement has been established in the North Sanctuary of the Wilpattu Reserve. Will authorities act to put a stop to this before a major portion of the country's largest forest reserve is lost forever?
The Wilpattu National Reserve was established as a national reserve in 1938. However, one could consider that the relevant laws governing national reserves were not applied to Wilpattu for close to 3 decades. This 3-decade period of lawlessness in the reserve came to an end following the war victory in 2009. Officials who dedicated themselves to the protection of the National Reserve, which stretches across more than 300,000 acres, were among the victims of the war. Notwithstanding such fear-inspiring experiences, zonal wildlife officers were operated in the area of the Wilpattu Reserve bordering the Puttalam district. 7 wildlife officers are now in operation in the Wilpattu National Reserve, which comprises of 5 zones. Over 50 officials have been attached to these officers. However, even 5 years after the war, there is a section of the Wilpattu Reserve that is not supervised by the Department of Wildlife. This is not simply an isolated patch of jungle, but a sanctuary. This area, dubbed the North Sanctuary, was included as part of the Wilpattu Reserve in 1947. This sanctuary stretched over a 6,000-acre area that comes under the purview of the Musalit Divisional Secretariat of the Manna district. When sections of the forest were cleared on either side of the road from Mollikulama to Manna via Silavatura during the final stages of the war in order to ensure security, parts of the North Sanctuary too were affected. In 2010, 2011 and 2012, the Department of Wildlife successfully halted attempts by certain groups to settle in the cleared area of the North Sanctuary. This was in spite of the fact that a wildlife office was not located within a 60-kilometer radius of the North Sanctuary. However, as of today, wildlife officers do not have the ability of entering the North Sanctuary. Against such a backdrop, tents have begun mushrooming within the North Sanctuary. Since pathways have not been constructed in the area where the sanctuary is located, tourists too cannot access the North Sanctuary. According to wildlife officers who on several occasions over the past month have observed the human activity in this area under the guise of travelling on the Mana Silawatu Road, more than 100 acres of the North Sanctuary have been destroyed to make way for these encampments. One can only establish what nature of law reigns beyond the borders of this encampment if those officials tasked with the protection of this sanctuary carry out their duties in keeping with the intention of this sanctuary being included to the Vilpattu Reserve in 1947. Will the North Sanctuary of the Vilpattu Reserve be allowed to become a bustling settlement that is a foe to the endemic flora and fauna of this nation? Director General of Wildlife and the Director General of Forest Conservation, this is over to you.
The remains of the deceased JVP candidate for the Gampaha district, Sumathipala Manawadu, who died in a tragic accident last night in Imbulgoda, was handed over to his relatives this evening. The accident was a result of a collision involving a motorbike and a lorry. The driver of the lorry has been arrested by the police in Polgahavela. As the following footage may be graphic, viewer discretion is advised.
Sumathipala Manawadu, who was the secretary of the All Ceylon Railway Employees Union, died last night when his motorbike met with an accident in the Imbulgoda area on the Colombo Kandy Road. The moment of the tragic accident was captured on CCTV camera. Sumathipala Manawadu met with the accident when attempting to overtake a Bowser. Manawadu, who suffered serious injuries, died upon admission to the Gampaha Base Hospital. According to the police, the victim was on his way to attend an election propaganda meeting. The police said that the lorry involved in the hit and run was stopped in Polgahavela and the driver was subsequently arrested. Sumathipala Manawadu served as the secretary of the All Ceylon Railway General Employees Union since its establishment in 1996. He also established the union to protect railway property and the rights of the Railway Employees Union and served as its convener. He also led the efforts to defeat the Railways Authority Bill that was brought forward in 2003. Incidentally, he also volunteered along with a group of 600 to renovate the 88-kilometer stretch of the coastal railway line that was destroyed by the powerful tsunami in 2004 and worked for a period of 57 days to restore the track. A father of two, the body of late Sumathipala Manawadu was brought to his residence in Ganemulla this evening.
In sports news, Vice President of the Board of Control for Cricket in India, Shival Yadav, says that even as the Supreme Court wants him to do so, N. Srinivasan is not stepping down as President. Yesterday, India's apex court granted N. Srinivasan a time period of 2 days to step down as President of the BCCI.
India's Supreme Court asked BCCI Chief N. Srinivasan to step down in order to ensure a fair probe of the Indian Premier League fixing and betting scandal. Court also said that it's quote-unquote nauseating that N. Srinivasan continued as BCCI Chief and he should step down if cricket is to be cleaned. Yadav said that BCCI will wait for the top court's order to decide its future course of action. The Indian Supreme Court is of the view that N. Srinivasan should step down before the apex court issues an order. The Indian Supreme Court is scheduled to take up the cases on allegations of betting and spot fixing in the IPL tomorrow.
The 11th round of trials for Super Fighter, Sri Lanka's first reality sports TV program, will be held at St. Joseph's College, Trincomalee this weekend. Aspiring boxers from the Polonnaruwa and Trincomalee districts are invited to participate in the trials and contend for a position among the final 100 contenders for the finals of Super Fighter. Super Fighter is a joint initiative of MAS Holdings, Newsfirst and the MTV and MBC Media Network. The trials held across the country so far have received a raucous reception from the public, with aspiring amateur boxers turning out in their hundreds to land a coveted spot among the final 100 contenders for the title of Super Fighter. For more information on the trials being held this weekend, call 075 900 101. That's 075 900 101.
Well, that brings an end to today's edition of Primetime News. It's a pleasure having you with us. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Minoshi Ratnasekara.
And I'm Madhushka Balasurya, wishing you a good night.
Hotline 0114 896 896. www.newsfirst.lk. Feedback at newsfirst.lk.